Уше!
Давай, бля! Заводись, бля!
Уше на три!
Заводись, бля!
Ну, объем!
What's going on, fellas? I have returned. After doing that 600 bench press, we began our cut immediately, made it through that week. Then I went over a couple of towns to go handle a couple of my local lifters at a meet, and that took all day, drove back. And then we had Monday off work, so Kirsten and I went and rented a bush hog to run over our property because it was getting a little bit overrun. And that took all day. And then lo and behold, right after that, we got sick as shit. So been a little bit behind on the videos, but I have returned. And now that I've down like 10 pounds in morning weight from what I was up to for the 600 bench press, and that kind of pre-diabetic haze is clearing from my head, I had lots of good video ideas. And I remembered one of my favorite sources of video ideas is things that I'm talking to my clients about. And I was actually just talking to one of my lifters. He says, "Hey, Sam, I'm kind of like a hyped lifter." For those of you not familiar in powerlifting and I guess sports performance in general, we have this concept of the arousal curve. Okay, get the jokes out of the way. Curves arouse me too. Very cool. Moving on, that's just what it's called. And it's basically this idea of the more hyped up the lifter gets, where is their performance? And different athletes fall on different points in that curve. Some athletes, if they get hyped up at all, their performance falls off a cliff because they get nervous and they start choking their cues. Other lifters, the more hype they get, the stronger they are. And different people fall at different points on this curve, and understanding where you fall on this curve, and it might be different from lift to lift. You might say, the more hyped up I get for a deadlift, the more weight I lift. But if I try to do that on a bench press, my cues go out the window and I perform worse. Understanding that and using that to your leverage is really important. So to ask the question, that's the title of this video, are you a hype lifter, right? And identifying that across your lifts is something you can make use of. And then I'll give you guys some advice based on where you fall. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, so you can kind of pick and choose between these. The more advanced so if someone's a little newer, their technique is a little bit less refined. Usually things just go the fuck out the window when they get hyped up. So they need to stay a little bit calmer until they got more reps under their belt and their motor pattern is more second nature. Right? So that's one thing we can think about. But let's say we identify ourselves as the calm lifter. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of guys that stay dead calm, no matter how much weight they're lifting. Guys like through history, like Mike Tuchscherer, Jesse Norris, Dan Green, just look like their heart rate is at like sub 60 when they're about to approach a max deadlift. And it always wound me up a little bit because I am not a calm lifter. If I get hyped up, I'm stronger. So when I'm going for a maximal attempt, I will do a bunch of rituals to try to spike up my adrenaline. I just observed that worked best for me. And I would always get bothered when there would be comments on these lifters. Oh, it's so cool. He doesn't have to do this yelling and shouting thing. I was like, God damn, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't helpful. Like it's not, I don't like when people look at me at the gym. I'm just scared shitless of this weight. And I want to make sure I got the best chance I can do of it not squishing me. And I'm stronger when I'm hyped up. I wish I was like them because it's very easy to lift in a more commercial gym environment if you're a low hype lifter and that's how you perform the best. And I'm sure all three of those guys, if they were stronger with hype, they would do it. But what's the tip for this lifter? The biggest thing is just having rituals to keep yourself calm because the adrenaline is going to try to keep up. If you care about lifting, it's something you've been thinking about, you know this is your planned max day, you're thinking about it all day, you're thinking about it all night, you're going to have your adrenaline gradually creeping up as you warm up without you trying. And we're trying to suppress that. So breathing, visualization, the second you start to feel your cues go out of your head due to nerves, you need to realize that and calm yourself down. We're just focusing on technique, execute the cues. Try to keep the adrenaline low and be aware of when those nerves are getting excessive and have rituals to bring them back down, right? If we know we perform best under that situation, we need to have the skills to replicate it. The nice part is as a low arousal lifter, your arousal stays the same whether you're doing hypertrophy or you're doing a maximum. It just becomes more difficult to keep your nerves down when you're doing a maximum. Now, on the other hand, let's say you're a hype lifter. There's nothing wrong with that other than the fact that it's a bit awkward in a commercial gym environment. And I don't like that part. But let's say we're a hype lifter. The younger guy that I coach is definitely a hype lifter, and it works for him. He's definitely a lot stronger when he brings a big amount of adrenaline to a lift. Max and I are very much the same way. Even if we trim it out of some of the videos because it's a little bit embarrassing, right? But that being said, that's how we maximize our result. And we're here to get strong. So whatever we got to do to maximize the result is what we're going to do. But we figured out some things that we need to do to execute that well. The first one is going to be periodizing your hype a little bit. So if we're in a hypertrophy phase and the goal is accumulating volume and refining our technique, we don't need the hype. The hype is a tool. I know it's addicting to come in and hit the salts and have 400 milligrams of caffeine and go buck wild every session, but that probably is not going to be sustainable. It's going to lead to an over-accruing of fatigue. It's probably going to lead to really slow rates of technical progression. It has to be a mean to an end. Even if it's really addicting, there's going to be a time and a place to pull that back, right? So when we're in a hypertrophy phase, we might want to not bring that much hype. Just a little bit, be present. Don't be completely dead coming into the set, but we're not making any effort to get fired up. Now then when we enter the strength phase, things are getting a little bit heavier. We can start implementing some of these rituals, getting the adrenaline up, getting a little bit fired up. Not as maximally fired up because we don't need to yet. Then when we enter the peaking phase, the weights are 90% plus. You're like, damn, these are kind of heavy. I'm nervous. I know I need to use this tool. We're going to start bringing some real hype. We're going to be used to that. So that way we're not going whole training cycle, no hype, maximum height on max out day. There's probably two reasons we don't want to do that. One is it could throw us off because we had a lack of practice with it. Just like how I wouldn't want an athlete just doing their whole training cycle beltless and then only putting on their belt for their maximum. Oh, it's going to give me this big boost. Well, it'll give you a bigger boost if you did a couple of sessions to acclimate to it and re-get that skill back. So the same thing applies to the hype. It's just another piece of equipment. And the other thing is we could probably get in a little bit heavier touches and a little bit better preparation. If we were bringing some hype in our 90 to 95% ranges, we're moving a little bit better rather than trying to do them dead calm as a hype lifter and having them move poorly, right? So that's the first thing we want to look at is we kind of periodize our hype based on its necessity, and that way it's going to stay a lot more potent when we actually need it, but it's not going to be so infrequently used that it's going to throw us off. And then the other thing that I think is a critical tip for the young hype lifter is to make sure that hype is going towards executing your cues. We don't want to be getting super fired up doing our 2 and our 3 plate deadlift, because while it'd be super cool to get maximally fired up, rip that 3 plates up, oh, it was so easy, post that on the Instagram. It'd be better if we kept our, hype in reserve. That way we're saving energy for when we actually need to call upon it. And it also gives us some data for what we need to fix on the day. Because if we just yank the shit out of the 3 plates, of course it's going to move fast. Let's say you're a 500-pound deadlifter, and we don't know what we need to fix for the day. Because what we want to do is we want to identify, I'm not anchoring my hips today, or I'm not packing my lats today, so I know what I need to focus on. I'm going to take that hype and I'm going to put it into my cues. Because one of the best tips I can give you guys is good lifters will usually front load their effort. Rather than think, I really want this lift, I'm willing to do a really slow, hard rep, it's better to think, I really want this lift, I'm going to take all this nerves and all this intensity and put that into executing the shit out of my cues, right? And put all that into getting as tight as I've ever gotten. Executing my cues the best I ever have. If we get ungodly tight before the lift and we do our setup perfectly and we brace as hard as we've ever braced, whatever our cues might be, the lift itself, even if it's a true RPE 10, ends up feeling relatively easy. So instead of just being willing to go to hell and back during this rep where we didn't get sufficiently tight beforehand, we want to make it feel easy by taking all that hype and front loading our effort into our cues. Now we're going to have general cues that we know this works for me, but what we specifically need to fix on the day is something we need to figure out early in those warm-ups. So let's say we're working our way up. Our early warm-ups are really just feeling out what is it that I need to execute well today? What is it that I need to fix? Add a little weight, try to fix it. Okay, I still need to increase the magnitude of packing my lats. Maybe that's it, right? Then we get, let's say, second to last warm-up. We're going to start bringing some hype because it's starting to get heavy, but not maximum hype. And then last warm-up, again, we're leaving a little bit in the tank in terms of hype, but we're practicing it to make sure it doesn't throw us off. We're practicing having that high adrenaline, using that adrenaline to execute our cues, and we're just going to be thinking this whole time about using all that nervous energy rather than just thinking about your car falling on your mom and you got to pick it up. Well, to pick up the heaviest object you can, you got to use those nerves and you got to use that adrenaline, not just for the increased force output, but to execute your cues. So you got to pack your lats if you want to pick that car up off your mom, right? So it's like whatever I'm missing on that day, I want to diagnose those things in the warm-ups and then use my hype to get me to execute them because I'm nervous about that top set. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of nerves. Every good lifter I know has nerves before a heavy lift. It's heavy, right? So it's like, man, I'm not engaging my abs like I probably should. I'm pushing out into my belt, but I'm not kind of bracing like I want someone to punch me in the stomach. I'm going to go do like a 10-second, nothing tiring, not to the point of exhaustion or fatigue. I'm going to do a 10-second plank focusing on that cue. And then I'm going to put my fourth plate on the bar and I'm going to try to find that feeling. Or, oh man, I'm not packing my lats. Maybe I'll do some low scale rows, or maybe I'm just going to sit there and I know, hey, today I'm not packing my lats. When I'm sitting resting between, I'm going to be running through mental movies of setting up how it's going to feel, it moving well, and I'm just going to think about packing, like in my start position, I'm going to pack my lats. And I'm just going to sit there, I'm going to flex my lats over and over and imagine what that's going to feel like in the start position. And that's how you can take all this nervous energy, front load it, and make the lifts easier for you. But you don't want to let your nerves go so crazy that those cues go out the window, because no matter how much of a hype lifter you are, you probably could have lifted more if you were hyped and technical. So that's where we want to put it. We also don't want to be exhausted by the time we get to our top set because we let our adrenaline get too high too early in our warm-ups. We're going to use that early stuff as diagnostics, figure out what it is we're going to execute, running through our mental movies, tensing the muscles we're going to tense, practicing bracing between the sets, not just sitting on our phone. We're kind of running through this and we're putting all this nervous energy towards executing. So those would be my tips for the hype lifter. Hopefully more of these videos coming soon now that I can think again.